Okay, so this review is going to be about Outlander episode 2, Castle Leoch and Leoch. And, in that case, Claire's actually been there before with her husband, Randall, when they actually visited the area before. In this case, she's like muddy, filthy. She needs a shower. She meets Miss Fitzgibbon, who gives her like a really hard stare down. And then she asked her if she was a charmer, and she was just like, yeah, kind of like that. I'm just, someone that helps, do a little bit of medicine, and then she's like, oh, okay, you can come on in. And then alas, she goes inside, they go ahead and she sleeps for the night. Then she takes a shower the next day. They didn't give her a bath. Back at that time, they actually had a bath of water pretty much heated up on the stoves, and then she took a shower like that. But that case, she's looking, Miss Fitzgibbon looks at her and she's like, what the heck is going on here? Because, she sees a brazier and she'd never seen one before. At that time, they hadn't even been created yet. So, pretty much in this case, Claire's advantage is that she can use her modern medicine witchery, berries, things like that to disinfect a wound. She knows what other things she can use to kind of combine other products that you could use at that time. Not products, but actual herbs and things of that nature, like plants that she can brew up and then make, some sort of medicine out of it. And then that's kind of how she buys her time at this point. But alas, in this case, she's basically in the same place that Braveheart movie was based upon. Scottish against the English, and so on and so forth. We won't get into that really deep right now, because as the story moves along, there are some real truths to it, and then there's some things that aren't really true, that are not actually history, but are actually, it's a fantasy, type romantical type of book that was actually written years ago, and then it has become now a show, just like The Last Kingdom, just like the Game of Thrones. And I feel like this is a really great series. The costumes are absolutely beautiful. Claire actually is undressed, and by Miss Fitzgibbon. She's kind of a round lady that kind of like looks like the type that kisses everything and makes it better in the castle. She's also some sort of like like a maiden type lady, like an older one that actually trains all the women to do all the housework and supervises them to make sure they do what they're supposed to do. Um, so in this case, she takes off her clothing and then she washes her up, um, and then puts her into a nice dress that's, common to the area, which really looks nice. Um, so before long, in this case, she learns a little bit more about Jamie's story, and she gets to know a lot more about his story in that way, because it's a very sad story what happened to him. All he was trying to do is protect his family, and he gets flogged by an English soldier. So in this case, what's going on is, while Claire's washing his back, clearing all Jamie's wounds, and removes a blanket covering him to tend to him a little bit further. She pulls back the fabric, and then she sees, in the back of his back, he's very much scarred. She's seen it before, and then she's seen him, kind of grimace and say the redcoats. And he begins to tell Claire how he was flogged twice in 1 week by Captain Jack Randall, who Jamie said seemed pleased and maybe even and took joy out of it in hurting him like that. The punishment, which was given out 4 years ago, was a result of 2 charges escaping Fort William and obstruction. Now, Jamie's father was away when the Redcoats came to his home, rushing to the house for the fields after hearing his sister Jenny screaming. Jamie fought 2 Redcoats, and it was then that Captain Jack Randall exited the house. I'm sorry, grabbing and holding to Jenny at gunpoint. Jamie froze and surrendered. She's Bonnie. She's Bonnie. Captain Jack told Jamie, I'll take a closer look. The captain said, ripping Jenny's dress open in front of the men and telling him to hold Jamie's head and force him to look. Afterward, he flogged Jamie in front of his sister. Now, he wanted to send a message, and this is what you get when you fight back against the English. Now, Jamie recounts to Claire as she begins to patch him up at Castle Leoch. Now, Captain Randall told Jenny she should watch to get her brother flogged, or if he can go in the house and give her some better entertainment. That's pretty much what he told her. She went with him. She thought, that he would kill her, but in this case, he didn't kill her. She didn't die or anything like that. But in this case, he took Jaime into custody. So Jaime talks about it, but then Claire kind of wants to change the subject. Um, but in that case, she really can't because he's like talking on and on about it, about what happened to him. So Jaime tells Claire she's kind of a kind woman with a good touch, and your husband is a lucky man. He adds when she wraps his torso. Her words take root. Claire begins to wonder, um, you know, what is her husband thinking? And she's like, I'm fine. And then she's just thinking about her husband. She begins to tell him. And then Jamie's like, is he alive even? Like what's really going on with your husband? And she's like, no, actually he's not alive. Because in this case, he's like going to be born 200 years later. And she starts to cry, and Jamie quiets her and holds her close with his other shoulder. A moment happens between them, but Claire breaks tension by getting up and apologizing. You need to be scared. You need not be scared of me, nor anyone else here, so long as I'm with you, Jamie says to Claire. So in that case, they talk a little bit strange, but I think it's really cute. We got another Jamie so that we can, go into this story instead. This time it's not incest. So I really would highly recommend you watch this show. There's another season 3 that's going to be debut in about 8 days. So for the next 8 days, I'm going to go ahead and just recap, finish up season 1 and 2 as we go forward, and then start reviewing season 3 because I've watched up to that far. But I want to recap the show because it's a really great show. The guy that's actually the Jack Randall of the show is actually Edmund Tully, which was a guy that Frank Randall, which is played by another person. Obviously, its real name is something different. We'll get onto that later. But he is actually the main character, and Caitrona Balfe is actually the other character. So this is a really cool show. This is a Stars show, so if you want to go ahead and learn a little bit more about it, I would recommend you go ahead and take advantage of the 7-day trial on Stars at this time, and I've left the link below the video so you can absolutely take advantage of that. So in this case, there's a couple of things going on here. There's a questioning day because they don't really believe that she is who she says she is. When Miss Fitzgerald went to go look at her clothing, she looks more like an English woman, and they want her to look more like a Scottish, so they redress her into clothing that looks more like what she should wear. She goes into a hall to eat, and it's kind of like an ambush, but she reminds her of a speech that she talked about with Frank, her husband. And Frank Randall's actually a ancestor of Black Jack Randall, Captain Jack Randall, who is the one that's a really bad guy in the future, in the past, that she's with, and is agonizingly crazy. He rapes her at the first sight. And if you haven't went to season, episode 1 of this, then I recommend, if you're listening to this one, you need to go back to the other. But basically in this case, she's trapped in the past, and she can't get back there because she's touched some stones in Ireland. And at this point in the setting, she's at Castle Leoch, which is, I kind of sound like Castle de Rock, kind of like how they say it in Game of Thrones. And I like the show. I think this is a really good show for anyone to watch. It's actually in the time of 1743. We are actually in the month of November at this time in the show. And so in this case, she goes into everything that has to do with this time, but has already talked about this with her husband, who happens to be a historian and quite a scholar. So she has that, as well as her the people that raised her, her family. Her paternal parents actually were they were archaeologists, so she knows a lot about the time period. Just by being around people that are educated in that sense, but she didn't go that way. She went into medical work. So when Claire enters the hall, everybody, she walks in to eat dinner. Murtaugh is actually one of the guys. I'm gonna start giving you some names so that you can know who the characters are. Murtaugh is actually one of the people um, that accompanied her to the area, and he's a Jacobite as well. So is the Mackenzie clan and everyone that's on the other side besides the English. So when she walks into the hall, the English do not like, the Scottish, and they just, want to overrun the area and take what they want, and it's kind of plunder this, plunder that, rape, kill, maim, whatever. They do what they want. And I feel it's kind of like an unfair situation because they're not from there, they're just taking over. They're trying to be like, the conquerors of the area. So just like Game of Thrones, you have the same type of struggles within the houses, the areas, the people, the culture differences are kind of like making things bad at this point. And Claire has basically been dropped into the middle of all this, which is very hard to deal with for her because she's not even from that time. So she kind of has to downplay who she is and actually pretend to be something that she's not. And people are kind of knowing this. So she doesn't want people to find out who she is. Um, and she doesn't understand how she ended up wandering around in that area and ended up where she was. She doesn't even understand what's happening. Um, she does have a flashback about a conversation at a pub where Frank explained to Reverend Wakefield how to withstand interrogations, and he tells them to stick to the truth as much as humanly possible, only altering those details that have to be kept secret. He said. So she uses that as a kind of a basis because she knows that's what's going to happen. Um, so she tells herself that she's a widow who's been traveling to meet with the distant relatives overseas and friends. When she and her servant were robbed by bandits, Claire explains she made a run for it, leaving her things behind. In the woods, she came across Captain Randall, who attacked her, and you're saying that a man wearing the king's commission decided to rape stray lady traveler for no good reason. Colum asks if there are ever a good reason for rape. Master Mackenzie, Claire replies, he apologizes and Claire realizes that she has an opening, using it to ask Laird about arranging transfer back to Inverness. In 5 days, a man is passing by Castle Leoch. He can take her, Colum says, suggesting Claire should enjoy her time at the castle until then. So, she gets out of it, but in this case, she goes to eat dinner and it's the same crap again. They're trying to ask her questions. She even thinks she's talking to a boy that's someone else's and it's not their child, and she makes a fool out of herself. It's, Master Mackenzie is basically the person that is over the house, and he's very much in power, and she doesn't recognize it's his child and says it's McDougal's child. McDougal is also a Jacobite who captured her and doesn't want to let her go. And he happens to be Mackenzie's brother. His name is McDougal Mackenzie. So, he's a Mackenzie Klansman, and he's very much a general and a commander of the army. Colum is actually the Laird. He gets upset, he's like, it's definitely not my brother's child. Kind of a snub. So, in this case, she goes out to meet Jaime because he's more of like her friend. Um, they also say that her name is actually weird because it should be Beecham, not Beach Camp. Um, and so they just kind of chop up her name and tell her that's not her name. She's weird. They don't know where she's come from. And at the end of the day, they keep her in the castle and don't let her out. That's really all that happens. There's more to the story, but you kind of need to watch the whole show. I don't want to give it away totally. So if you want to learn a little bit more about Outlander, I recommend that you take advantage of the 7-day trial. It might be extended on Amazon, but go ahead and join Amazon Prime, or just, get a subscription to Amazon Stars Edition and take advantage of what could be possible on that app. So thank you so much for tuning in to the Throne Room. This is the Outlander, Castle Leoch, and I hope that you've enjoyed this review of Outlander. I'll be up next with Outlander episode 3 and 4, and I'll start, making them a little bit shorter, and we're going to move forward on season 2, and then we'll be closer to season 3 coming up on the 10th of September of 2017. Thank you for tuning in to the Throne Room, and thank you for stopping by. Have a great day.